One of the most interesting twists on the PVPVE extraction shooter released into early live access recently. Being an extraction shooter means that it's instantly compared to other ones like Escape from Tarkov, Arena Breakout Infinite, and Gray Zone Warfare. And now that it's been released, I can tell you that it's very similar in some aspects, but in others, it is a completely different type of game. The most common description is Escape from Tarkov meets Stalker. I said that in my other video, and it still holds out. Like other extraction shooters like Arena Breakout Infinite and Gray Zone Warfare, who had a massive kind of explosion of popularity as they were very quickly deemed the, Escape from Tarkov killer, Active Matter has managed to fly under the radar. It's being developed by Gaijin Entertainment, the same company behind Enlisted, Cuisine Royale, and of course, what they're most known for, War Thunder. Before it released, it had 4 closed beta tests that flew under the radar. I have no idea if this is on purpose to try to keep the hype low until they've actually decided what kind of game they want this to be. I played the final closed beta test, and I can say there are some aspects of that closed beta test that are not in this closed beta test. Some of these enemies you fight much differently than you did in the closed beta in the released version now. And what I can see is as the next, 3 months, 6 months, 8 months goes on, the game is going to evolve heavily. The first major bit of press that Active Matter received was at the Future Games Show, where they released a trailer showing combat and showing enemies for the first time. And it did generate hype, as you can see with the Discord server, how many people joined. A few months before this, the social media channels had also started to become active, posting content, trying to build hype. So how does Active Matter set itself apart from these other extraction shooters? The first and most obvious way is through its PvE combat. Unlike Gray Zone or Tarkov, you can very quickly get overwhelmed by enemies that don't have guns, by these SCP creatures who've been affected by the active matter in game and are just out to try to, hurt you and keep you from extracting. I would say 100% of creators who experience their first raid and go up against Flower Man are legitimately jump scared, surprised, and walk away laughing at how insane the first time you fight these AI creatures are, which is what brings that Stalker comparison. The game still has PvP. You still run into players. Players will still, try to third party you when you're fighting. But the thing that keeps your heart racing in this game is knowing that at any minute you could activate 2 or 3 different mobs. They could be all over you, and it's just so hectic that sometimes you just can't land your shots and you die. This is both a positive and a negative sometimes. I would say that's probably the biggest critique they have is how easy it is to activate these AI and mobs onto your presence, which I think they've already, even a weekend, have adjusted this to make it better. I have about 20 hours into the game total, along with my time in closed beta, and I am having a blast. I truly do not believe there's any other game like it on the market right now, and watching other creators talk about that, I think they agree. To buy the game, you need to go to Active Matter's website. It is currently not released on Steam. They have said that they will release it next year. I assume that means hopefully early next year, but we will see how development goes now that they've dropped the game onto a live version. We'll see down the road how long that takes. They haven't given an exact date yet, but they say it will be on Steam next year. I find this very interesting because obviously they are losing some sales to keep it off of Steam right now. I think the big reason for that is they are taking this time for the people who are very interested in the game, really want to try it, to buy the game, get into the game, really kind of critique it in ways that makes the game better. I do hope that Gaijin and the Active Matter team who are developing this game listen to player feedback, make the game better so that in 3, 4, 6 months, when the game releases on Steam, it's in a much better state and a more enjoyable state, so the game has a really chance to hit the ground running and bring in new players. Should you buy the game right now? That really is up to you. If you're excited about the game and you want to try it, then you should pick it up, but you should know that if you play it and you don't like it, you cannot return it. You do not have any kind of returns like you do on Steam, where you have your 2 hours to try and then you can return it. So what are some of the major differences that set this game apart from all of the other extraction shooters that are currently releasing? I've stated that the PvE elements are the thing that makes this game so unique compared to other ones, and I do stand by that. But there are so many other reasons for you to look at Active Matter as a completely different game. It is in no way a clone of really anything out there on the market right now. I remember watching the first trailer that I saw for Active Matter and thinking, it's in the very first time I saw someone jump in a vehicle and start driving around, I was like, that is awesome. It reminded me of Enlisted. Some of the Jeeps look very similar to that, but it has a lot more than just Jeeps. You have access to ATVs, trucks. Down the road, you'll have access to even larger vehicles like a T-90 tank, a Ka-50 helicopter. They are talking about in future updates having things like jetpacks. There are a lot of options, and for bigger maps, these can make a massive difference. You also have access to scout drones where you can put a grenade in and drop it down on an enemy. For things like the ATVs, you can actually use a signal to call them in on your position, and it gives you the option to, extract with them and use them later on. We haven't seen anything like that in extraction shooters that I've played. The game released with a lot of maps, a lot more maps than you would expect for any game that is essentially just now hitting early access and was just in closed beta. You have about 8 or 9 maps total to start out the game. Now, within those maps, you have other types of maps as well. You've got a distortion, overgrowth, hive, midnight, darkness, unstable zone. And within each of those zones, you get different enemy types that kind of prefer to spawn there. In hive, you end up with the bugs that fly around and attack you. They drive me crazy. Overgrowth, you end up with a lot of the flower men, and each one, has their own set of quests that you need to do as well. Inventory management is a lot different than Tarkov. It is more just size-based as opposed to kind of cell-based. So you're not having to play Tetris with your items to get them to store. You're not looking at something and saying, oh, well, this piece of paper takes up as much space as an entire box of shells, which is good for the average player. I love the Tarkov inventory management because, again, it's a whole half the time you spend is just making sure you can fit everything in your stash. Overall, I think it's an improvement. I think it needs work. I think the UI especially needs work. Outside of the PVE AI, UI is probably the #1 complaint, and it's deserved. It is very basic, very clunky. I don't know how they decided to make the UI like this. I don't know if they were going for like an 80s aesthetic, but they need to change it. They need to make it much more user-friendly as soon as possible. One of the first things you see a new player say is, well, where do I sell my items? In this game, you actually do not have a vendor that you sell your items to. What you have is a refinery and a replicator. And the replicator is extremely important, especially kind of later in the game as you're progressing, because you unlock things called blueprints in the game. And the way you unlock blueprints is by extracting with items in raid. So if you extract with a Mosin in raid, that adds experience towards the blueprints. Once you fill up the bar, you can now unlock the Mosin, and then you can use the Mosin. You can essentially print it for free. It's just time-based after that. Some items are easier to do than others if you have access to buy them or have access to pick them up during the raid. Some items are going to be more difficult. Think of like an RPK or maybe even the backpack that you see there. Some of those you don't run into very often, and they're more difficult to get, and you end up having to, if you want to get them, you have to spend your chrono traces to do it. Another thing that's important is your sleeves as a character, your body sleeves. As you can see, I have access to this one. If you click select body sleeve, you have access to other ones that you can unlock within your monolith. Each one has their own special attributes, their own type of armor. And what you're looking at is characters that have lived in the game that you respawn as, essentially, whenever you go into an active matter zone. A couple of these were from the purchase packs. So if you bought the premium edition or the elite edition, you had access to, these two, depending on which one you bought. And these other ones are your standard editions. Also below that, you'll see here, you have these chrono genes that you have as well. These are unlocked through the refinery, and each one gives a special attribute. You get 4 total, and you can see here jump, pain shock, serenity, speed, gathering, and these are the ones I do not have unlocked. These are kind of RNG. The way that you're able to get chrono genes in active matter is by taking those to the refinery and refining them down. It is RNG. You're going to get a lot of the same chrono genes over and over and over again. Eventually, you'll get level 2s and level 3s. It really depends on how often you're extracting and how often you're putting those into the refinery. They're really not worth refining just 2 credits. Try to always put those in and get as many of these chrono genes as you can. But something interesting about these chrono genes is it gives you the option to customize your character in the way that you want to play. Fun thing about like fine motor skills, it allows you to repack your mags very quickly. Obviously, carrying capacity, endurance, and speed, those make sense. And it may not seem like it, but if you don't want to bring in 12 mags, repacking your mags can be very, very important on this game, considering how many AI you can run into. I think there are still a lot of things that can be improved upon the game. Some more thorough weapon customization would bring in a lot more players, especially fans of other extraction shooters. Now, it doesn't need to be Tarkov level. I think a little bit extra customization will go a long way in getting people in, making them kind of own their guns that they have. Currently, there is only one type of ammo. That is just the size ammo that fits in your gun. 9x18, 9x19, 7.62x39. There are no other AP. There's no, HE. There's no other types. I'm sure that will happen down the road. Some people are excited about that because they want to keep the competition as close as you can. There's currently no talks of doing a wipe in the game. So bringing new players in to face other players who already have the highest ammo unlocked is going to be rough. It gets that way very quickly, even in Tarkov that has, periodic wipes. But I will think that as more enemies get introduced, I think we will need certain types of ammo. And I think being able to choose what type of ammo you take into a raid that is more effective against certain enemies would honestly make a lot of people who probably feel helpless sometimes against the PvE aspects of this game feel a lot better. I hope that very soon they expand upon the tutorials in the game. I think right now they are very lacking. They kind of show you some fun aspects of active matter where you can walk up the walls and grab your active matter. But it as I've watched other creators come in, some of the larger creators come in and say, where do I sell things? Where do I sell things? How do I do this? I really think that, some kind of tutorial into the refinery and into the replicator would go a long way to help explain people these are the things you need. Make sure they know they need to keep those blue active matter items. Make sure they know to refine them even if they're a fun weapon. Let them know if they unlock a blueprint that weapon is now something they can print and don't have to worry about buying off of the store. 100% too. The biggest thing when I was playing with a friend of mine who said at one point he went to the refinery and refined something and then thought that he would just get that weapon from now on. And I had explained to him, no, that is something that you need to have enough of those things to unlock. And he was mildly frustrated because he was super excited about using that gun. And I don't hate the idea of leaving some things for characters to find on their own. Going into maps and kind of having everything fog of war, having just to find things on your own. They do a good job of giving, markers for you to go to try to find certain things. I don't hate that personally. I mean, Tarkov does not have that, and that's why people love it. But I think the middle ground is not a bad place to sit if you're doing other things well. And I think that active matter is doing that. But this is one area, being the refinery and the replicator, that is not a natural place for people to go. I go to vendor, I sell thing, I buy thing. That is a normal game mechanic. Take thing to machine, thing disappear, go other thing, can't get it back. That's not necessarily normal. I hope that they are able to get people understanding that sooner in game, as opposed to letting them get frustrated, not knowing what to do, and then they say, well, I'm done. I'm gonna go play something else. Performance wise, I run everything pretty much at ultra. I do not have a brand new state-of-the-art PC, and I very rarely run into issues. I stay at my frame rate most of the time, and I find that to be really impressive. An early access game where we're not constantly dropping out of a server, we're not crashing, we're not having these weird kind of stutter steps that you experience in other games. I think that is extremely impressive. Kind of makes sense. Again, they have Enlisted. This is built on top of the Daegor engine, in which Enlisted, and I'm pretty sure Cuisine Royale is built in as well, and obviously War Thunder. So I'm hoping that continues down the road to where we continue to see really good performance for players, because that is one thing that I think right now is excelling. I think every other game that is released in early access has had performance issues in some way, and this game has not so far for me. Now, as more people find out, more people get into the games, you start to have degradation of servers. That may change, but as of now, I've had almost no issues. If you do pick up the game, guys, make sure you report any issues you have. Join their Discord as well. It's an awesome place to meet new people. I think there's 100 people in there right now playing together. Join my Discord. You can see that down below. Hit the subscribe button. I'm going to be making almost exclusively active matter content for the next few weeks. So if you want to find out more about the game, do that. Thanks for watching this, guys. Again, I'm excited to be back on YouTube, excited to be making content. I made another one, a few days ago about active matter. I hope you're excited to see more. If there's anything you have questions about the game in, please comment down below. Let me know. I hope you have a wonderful day. It's good to be back, and I'll see you all in the next video.